Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening, everyone, depending on your time zone. Today, we're having a very unique episode of Neo Conversations. So instead of discussing politics in the United States or in foreign policy in the Middle East or in Southeast Asia, we're going to be discussing now politics with some of our allies abroad, or at least a little closer to home for some of you. The topic of Irish unionism and with on Ulster and Rethink 32 has been a topic that has popped up of late. Now, recently, the United Kingdom has decided to leave the EU. Everyone knows that. And even though there have been people who have tried to prevent the United Kingdom from leaving the EU, it seems that pretty much the United Kingdom leaving the EU is now an inevitability at this point. However, there are people in Brussels and in London, in Northern, who are trying to essentially, in a way, make Northern Ireland or Ulster a de facto province of the Republic of Ireland by essentially keeping it to the rules of the EU and not of the United Kingdom. And obviously, the Unionists in Northern Ireland or Ulster, well, this won't stand with them. And there are many efforts by Unionists to make their stand and say that we are part of the United Kingdom and we're not part of the Republic of Ireland. But it's not just people in Ulster who see that their allegiance is to the United Kingdom. There are people even in the Republic of Ireland today who still long for unity, not as the Republic of Ireland, but with the United Kingdom. And I'm here to talk on these topics with TrisBurnedLands, who is the founder of his own organization, the Irish Unionist Party. And I've supported them in the past, and I continue to support their work, and I hope they're successful in gaining more people to their cause. How are you doing today, Tristan?
I'm doing quite well. Thank you for letting me on to your show.
Well, no problem. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. So, anyway, talk to me about some of your advocacy and what you're doing. What are the goals of the Irish Unionist Party? For those of our members or people watching who are unfamiliar, I've seen some of your work and I've seen you post stickers and posters and your advocacy. But for those who aren't sure about it, like Dragon Raw is here, why don't you talk about it?
Yeah, sure. Irish Unionism has been a thing since 1893. Uh, the whole principle behind it is we don't particularly agree with uh, we don't particularly agree with Stormont, but we do not agree to a republic. We think that Ireland should be ruled from London, as it is the main centre of the Isles. Uh, we're, of course, we're anti-EU, uh, and our main thing is trying to raise awareness against the EU in Ireland, because the EU has been abusing the Irish populace for quite some time over taxes and stuff. So yeah, that's some of the things that we're trying to. You know.
Okay, so for those of our viewers who don't know what Stormont is essentially, if I can describe it, a government center in Ulster or in Northern Ireland, in which Ulster people in Ulster or Northern Ireland sort of conduct their political affairs. It's sort of like a government at home, besides the government in London. It's supposed to allow for people there to kind of conduct their own personal affairs because of the history of the region. So you said that you kind of opposed to Stormont. Would you tell some of the viewers why, like, give us some specific reasons, and why you want to be ruled from London, unity with the United Kingdom?
Yeah, sure. See, Stormont was the whole entire reason why it was founded was because the Kingdom of Ireland had to make an exile government to fall back on whenever Dublin did eventually split off from the rest of the United Kingdom. Now, for quite some time, it was ruled by the UUP, which was a continuation of the Irish Unionist Alliance, which was the legitimate government of Ireland. But during the 50s, the DUP, which, to be honest, a lot of people were big fans of them, but obviously as soon as their main leader, Ian Paisley, moved away from the party, the whole entire party sort of fell apart. It's not a legitimate government of Ireland, and it is very reluctant to allow Irish Unionists even in it. I want to make it possible where we can move it back to where Lord Sunderson had it in the 70s, which would be by London rule. Not in Dublin, not in Belfast, but in London, because it is our main parliament building as the United Kingdom.
And that would certainly make sense, because it's good. It's a good idea to have a strong centralized government that can represent the affairs of everyone, rather than different pockets of government, in which can sometimes even create contradictory or issues and stuff like that. So there's a hashtag going out called Rethink 32 from you or some right or so. Would you describe what that hashtag is? What does that mean in particular? Because there's a lot of people who say, "Oh, we want a Republic of Ireland with 32 counties." But what does Rethink 32 mean specifically?
Right. Well, it wasn't me who started it. It was one of our other IUP members who had started it. But basically, there was this sort of hashtag going around from the Republican unities, most of the far left ones who have been doing all these big marches and everything, trying to show off strength, and they had started this hashtag Think32. And obviously, one of our members had thought, how about we just rethink that a wee bit? So it sort of just became Rethink 32, sort of like how we have going against all that sort of stuff where we're trying to reclaim words. So that's where that sort of came around, is just claiming words and mottos.
Okay, that's very cool because, when we talk about Ireland, in the West, we have this idea that, oh, Republic of Ireland, oh, we support the Irish and all this jazz. And this has gone on, unfortunately, for a long time because of the misrepresentation of what's going on in Northern Ireland. The Republican movement has done a very effective jobs and good job, well, sadly, of getting people here in the United States to support their cause. It's been largely through a lot of lies and propaganda. They've done this for decades, through manipulating the minds of, the Irish diaspora here in the United States to support their cause, saying, we're fighting for freedom and against British tyranny and all that, nonsense and jazz. And unfortunately, it's actually it's worked. I mean, even today we have organizations like Friends of Sinn Féin, which literally are able to raise, millions of dollars here in the United States. I mean, Friends of Sinn Féin has got this on record that they literally are able to raise millions of dollars, which they then send over to their, friends over in Ulster and in Northern Ireland. And it just shocks me that they can do this sort of fundraising abroad and that there are no eyebrows raised. I mean, it's very concerning. What do you think about that? Because historically, we knew that the money that was donated to the organization, or to at least to people, advocating for, Sinn Féin in, the 70s and 80s and even in the early 90s, were using it not for humanitarian work. They were using it to actually purchase guns and supplies for bombs and things like that. So how concerning is it to you that even today, Republicans can do all this fundraising in places like the United States, make millions, and no one raises an eyebrow?
Yeah, it's kind of disappointing. Of like, it's quite disappointing to see that this sort of stuff can continue on in the modern day and age. But to be honest, I have grown to expect this sort of thing. The whole thing with the funding from shot at abroad, uh, as you said, they're in millions of pounds. It's and what people don't understand is actually how much you can actually genuinely do with just £1,000. With £1,000, you can buy around 15 guns with ammunition, and it only costs them a few £100 to make a bomb to blow up half a housing estate, which is around 30 people's homes, uh, such as Claudia and all that. That bombing only costed them around maybe £100 at most, and it was devastating to the community. So, quite frankly, where people like you who spread awareness to say, don't fund these groups, they're already getting millions of pounds. Don't fund them because they are using it to bomb and to shoot people. That is probably the most important thing that people can do to spread awareness of Ireland, because with each little donation, it just adds a wee bit more to their gun supply and prepares them for their next bombing. You know.
Exactly. I mean, the problem with, unfortunately, the politics is that, we think that, the provisional IRA went away in the 90s with the Good Friday, which I would argue is, a sellout, to, people there, because what essentially it did was it legitimized, terrorists, into a political force. And, that sort of happened in Colombia. So my family is from Colombia. My mother, was born there and came to the United States, and spent my most of my a lot of my family is still from South America, from Chile and stuff like that. So in Colombia now, and in Colombia, I still have family members over there. So not all the families here in the States. Some of the families still in Colombia. They own property there, and they talked. And in Colombia, we had our own IRA, new provisional IRA or IRA. We had what was called FARC. FARC was a Marxist-Leninist terrorist organization that did the same thing that the IRA did. They waged a jungle and urban guerrilla war campaign where they bombed buildings, civilian targets usually. They shot at police. They shot at people who said, "Hey, you guys are doing a terrible thing." They intimidated journalists and government officials, people in general, and committed all sorts of horrific acts and helped fund the drug problem that we, see in the United States, because one of their biggest ways to get money was to, well, when you're a terrorist organization, how are you going to make money? You do it through legal means, and they cultivated and sold drugs, like drugs like cocaine. Um, they created terrible problems in Colombia. I mean, I've got uh, and Marx and far left issues in Colombia have been long-standing. They didn't just exist. They didn't pop out of the 70s, as or the late 60s as the far left movement started to gain political power and strength and money. This goes back in Colombia back into even the late 40s. We had a period called La Violencia, sort of kind of like your troubles, where in La Violencia was where far left people and right wing people essentially at this point just wouldn't get along and just literally fought each other in the streets. And I lost, according to my grandmother, one of her family members, a brother of hers, was actually killed by a far left gang in Bogota, which is it's the capital of Colombia. And we had this terrorism for years exist. And recently, the government, even though the people of Colombia did not support it, because it went to referendum, mind you, it went to referendum, and the people rejected this deal. It was a very close margin, but the people of Colombia said, we don't want to legitimize FARC. And even though that passed, the government kind of went around it by revising it a little bit and then saying, okay, now we're going to put it to the legislature, not to the people, and legitimized FARC. And now FARC actually is now a political party in the government. And the people said, oh, well, at least the violence over. Well, guess what happened recently? In Colombia, we had far left Antifa and other groups, because Antifa is not just a European or an American far left Marxist-Leninist movement. It's actually a global thing. And even in Colombia, where they get support from Venezuela, they popped up and they were committing violence and all sorts of garbage. And people said, well, this is what happens when you legitimize a terrorist group and give them actual political power. They then use their influence to then create problems as they're doing. They're trying to go after legally, like former President Uribe, anyone that's opposed their terrorism. They're trying to now support, disruption and chaos in Colombia, trying to prevent, physical reform. They're certainly closetly supporting some of the FARC rebels who have refused to lay down their guns. So it's the same thing over in Northern Ireland or Ulster, where Sinn Féin, again the political wing of the Provisional IRA, even though it became a political party and got legitimized, that didn't stop them from supporting far left Marxists who have still committed terrorist acts, who have killed police, killed innocent people, and still from pursuing their political aims. So talk about that for a second, like specifically from the Northern Ireland perspective.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up one of the most dangerous groups as I see it in the modern era, which I find it kind of shocking that it's just let to go past Antifa. They're international revolutionaries, and they are probably the biggest threat to the West in the modern era. Uh, they they have obviously been shown in America to be openly carrying guns on marches and everything, and with South America, they obviously have quite a lot of support down there. Or, well, not particularly actual normal people support, but they are heavily funded in South America and many other communist revolutionary groups down there. And it's just a bit disappointing, really, to see that the West does actually nothing about it whatsoever. And obviously we have Antifa over here in Northern Ireland, but they're not particularly too much of a threat because the police have been shutting down their marches. One of the few things that the PSNI has been able to do was to shut down some major Antifa marches in Belfast and Derry. It's a very concerning group, and I wish more people knew solutions to stopping them.
Well, definitely. I mean, not just that. Birds of a feather tend to stick together, and it doesn't matter whether the bird is good or bad. In Colombia, for example, this is already known that the Provisional IRA or the IRA actually did support FARC in our country. They helped train some of their members. They helped get them guns. They also participated in the drug trade, because again, that isn't that a way one of the IRAs the IRA was able to support and fundraise and make money by doing drugs?
Yeah, yeah, it was one of the, and it is still to this day, one of the biggest funders or ways that they raise up money is through the cocaine and the LSD trade. Uh, Obviously, in my area where I'm at, they mostly trade in shrooms and stuff like that to kids, which obviously some of the local high schools.
Wait, you're saying that they do this to kids?
Yeah, well, not technically kids since that they are only 14 years old, but I would still class them as kids. 14 and 13-year-olds, they do go to their local high schools and then they pass around marijuana, shrooms, because kids obviously think, oh, this is cool. I've got marijuana. I can smoke this around the back of the PE change room or whatever. And obviously, it's a big issue in a lot of Northern Irish and in the Republic schools where travellers or IRA members will pass around to local, like, fourth year high schoolers these drugs to sell to the younger years, and then the IRA, of course, gets a cut of it. And it's not only with the high school system, it's with the football clubs, it's with the GAA clubs, it's with whatever club or foundation the IRA trades drugs through there. They have no moral basis for what's right or wrong. They just see a way to make money.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're selling drugs to a 14-year-old, I mean, that to me is a kid. That to me is just absolutely repugnant and horrible. You know, it's because it just shows you though how toxic they are because they're literally trying to get kids on drugs for money. You know, I don't care what the cause is. I mean, no offense. I mean, it's not a very good cause if you're literally trying to make money by selling drugs to kids. I think at that point you kind of need to rethink what you believe in and what you're doing. If that to you, you know, is if that is legitimate, you know, if your political goals are legitimate, you know, doing that.
So, and I know that the drug trade, especially in South America, which is where they do get a lot of the cocaine from, I know that much, and methamphetamine, I think it is, they get it from the southern regions of America. Uh, it's a big issue, honestly, and I, I think that if Joe Biden, like, I over here, we don't particularly, we're not really big fans of Joe Biden over here. Uh, I think he could redeem himself if he'd done something about that, Atlantic drug trade. It's seriously one of the biggest issues in the modern era, I think. And I mean, it's not only affecting over here in the West, it's affecting England, it's affecting Cuba, it's affecting Germany, it's affecting France, it's affecting Spain, and it is one of the biggest issues in the modern era is the Atlantic drug trade.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. And, you know, it kind of just shows you the extent of what, you know, groups like that are willing to do for a political aim. I mean, because Sinn Féin, you know, talks about, oh, we don't want the kids on the drugs or stuff like that, or, oh, we don't support, you know, nationalist violence and stuff like that. But do we really see them effectively besides, you know, offering, you know, simple platitudes on a political platform, anything really concrete in this area? I mean, we don't see it, you know. I mean, again, it's a huge problem. And, you know, this is also why I'm not a libertarian anymore, because I don't believe that, because they say, oh, well, you know, if you give people the choice about, you know, drugs and their effects and stuff like that, then what they'll do is they'll just, you know, they won't choose the drugs. Kids are not like that. Kids are very naive, you know. Kids, unfortunately, they're more manipulative. They're because they're developing, they're able to be manipulated, and anything, you know, bad is cool, you know, like, ooh, I want to try that. And then all these kids get hooked on these, you know, drugs like what you're talking about, and then they end up becoming addicts, and they ended up, you know, having destroyed lives because they're trying to essentially feed an addiction, you know, and live a normal life. And you can't do them both. You can pretend to have a normal life, but that's how it goes. But let's talk about though your organization though, because I've been trying, because I obviously try on my time, you know, on Twitter and sometimes in my videos to advocate for, you know, Ulster and advocate for Unionism. But what is your organization doing specifically? You know, because I've seen some of your campaigns. You know, putting stickers out, posters out. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, at the moment, most of our stuff that we've been showing out to the public has just been the sticker and the poster campaign, but obviously we have a lot more planned behind the scenes that people don't really get to see, such as talking to a lot of the top head political people in Northern Ireland, and so we're trying to reach out to Fianna Gael and Fianna Fáil at the moment. But I mean, at the moment, behind the scenes, a lot of the things that we're trying to organize is we're trying to talk to farmers, to just average people around the Republic, and talking to the far west communities of Mayo and Sligo and Clare to see what they, because they are the most abused bit of Ireland. Because the way that the Republic works is you'll have Dublin, which gets most of the funding, along with the Leinster provinces. They get the rest of the funding, and then they'll send like 10% or so to Munster, and then 5% of all government funds to Connacht, and basically nothing to Ulster occupied territories. It's That's why I always say that we're focusing mostly on Connacht and Munster, because they are the abandoned kingdoms behind enemy lines, like, and it's so we're just trying to, at the moment, put up stickers, put up posters around those areas, let them know that we're here to speak to them, to hear their issues, and then try and organize something with all the big business owners where we can promise them that they can have their own sort of, they can dictate what goes on in their local area as it should be, instead of some guy in Dublin who hasn't even visited the area in years. He just goes like, ah, uh, I guess we'll build up a local Tesco's there or something. Meanwhile, all roads are just completely destroyed because they haven't been upgraded in over 100 years. So that's what we're doing at the moment. It's just supporting Munster and Connacht people and letting them know that we're here.
Well, that obviously makes sense. You know, you want to start growing and advocating. You know, you start off small, you start to grow bigger, you start to get people to at least recognize your name and recognize, you know, kind of the at least in you know if you can in one sentence, you know, like short, sweet, to the point, what exactly you're looking for. And I really have been liking some of the stickers and content that you're pushing out, and you're even trying to get financial support for your work. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, we have been at the moment. Uh,
Because you have a Ko-fi page, and I helped you out with that, didn't I?
yeah, yeah, it's been a great help because it's without the Ko-fi, to be honest, we would be still 2 months behind on wherever we're at the moment. Uh, Without people's support, the movement is basically, it's going to slow down to a screeching halt, because we did have a time where a lot of our members stopped even showing up to meetings. They stopped even helping us because they were just like, we have no funding, we have no backing, and the whole entire movement just basically stopped for 4 months, which a lot of people saw as our Twitter died for 4 months, because that's why we just had no funding and all of our members just sort of abandoned. Uh, but the Ko-Fi has now propped us to where we're now able to do another live meeting in Waterford this time, near Cork, which shall be happening in November time, which we've already invited uh, Brian Spencer to. He is a big guy in Northern Irish politics. He does all these podcasts and all the political cartoons. And we've invited a lot of our members out to Waterford in November time. And without the Ko-Fi, that just would not have been possible. And it's a big step forward for the party. So it is.
Yeah, let me see if I can show the viewers this real quick, because I would like them to see. I'd like them to see this because it's so important for the support for the organization to get going off the ground and to be just stronger than what it is right now, because the movement cannot go forward unless there is actually some backing behind it. So it's extremely important for us to do that. So here we go. All right, so everyone, this is the Ko-fi page for the Irish Unionist Party, or TrisBurnedLands, and I'm going to post that in the chat. And I would hope every one of you would visit and take your time to donate, £3 British, £6 British, 50 British pounds, whatever you feel is good to give, because this work is important. It can't go on without some sort of financial support. And Tris, I see you have some membership tiers here. Talk about that real quick.
Yeah, we had a lot of people messaging us about could we mail them out some of the posters and the stickers and the badges. And so I found out that there was a way to ask for their address while they pay for it. So I was just like, oh, this is the perfect way to send out stickers to people all across Ireland and to other countries. And so, yeah, we've just got these tiers where you can get yourself a poster with some stickers or a badge or some of the other stickers and all that.
And even a even an IUP poster, that would actually be pretty cool. I'd like to see one of those eventually. But yes, everyone. So please, I'm going to post in the uh, comments for everyone. So please, everyone, take a look at that. Go check out that website, and definitely support the work our friend is doing, because Irish unionism is important. It's very important for us in states and abroad to support it, and that's why. So every guys, if you guys have a little bit to give, give it, because the work can't be done without backing behind it. Now, I also want to discuss what also some of the issues that you've been seeing in Ireland recently, because sadly, you showed me a video of recently some new IRA people, taking their guns out in public and shooting them. I mean, what the heck is going on with that?
It's a whole lot more common than people would like to admit. Uh, I know in my town, uh, or the town just up the road, because I don't actually even live in the town. I live on the way outskirts in between a loyalist town and a Republican town. Then the Republican town, they always have at St. Patrick's Day, they have all the Provisional IRA men go marching up that road, and then they, of course, whenever they reach the beach area, they'll take out some rifles and they'll fire it to the air for a salute of sorts. Uh, it's a dangerous practice, by the way, because people don't realize that those bullets do eventually land on something, and they sometimes do actually hit people's houses. But what was happening the other day was at one of the hunger strikers' mural. He was a communist. He was a backer of Fidel Castro, who supported the people in Colombia as much of the other hunger strikers did. The people who helped bomb some children. Uh, I forget what you call the place at the very moment, but it was a village, and some children were injured in the bombing that Bobby Sands and his friends helped out with. But the INLA, which was the communist wing of it, or the open communist wing of it, done a gunfire salute, which happens quite a lot in Northern Ireland. Uh, that's basically what was happening. I was happy to see that the only actual political party leader besides us that acknowledged it was the UUP. I find it kind of shocking. that to keep the peace in Northern Ireland for the Good Friday Agreement, which apparently is apparently in full swing. Uh, Apparently, you're not allowed to report on that sort of stuff because that sort of stuff happens all the time over here. So it's sort of just a very common thing where there has been car bombings. My high school was car bombed a few years back. Luckily, no one got injured because it missed the gas tanks. Uh, all these other stuff, and none of it's ever reported in the news. And why? Simply because for the Good Friday Agreement is their excuse, and it's a very common thing, and it's a very disappointing thing to see that it's just allowed to go ahead with. So that's just what happened the other day.
Yeah, it's just very shocking because people think that, with the Good Friday Agreement, that it all just went away and it all disappeared. That's just not true. It just went underground. That's all. It simply just got out of the public view. In some cases, for people internationally to say, oh well, it's all taken care of now, but not really. And I'm actually going to show the audience that, because I'd like them to see this. So let me get this, because it's important that they understand just what's going on. There we go. Trans. Well, hold on a second. I thought I had it. Okay, perfect. Now I've got it. All right, everyone. So the video that I'm referring to, I'm going to show it now to you all so you can take a look. So here we go.
Everybody, a lot of people here feel personally as well. But the family is tough to the bottom.
So I don't know if you guys can see this, but here we've got some, the gun in the clenched fist and the red star, and here you have the gun, the clenched fist and the red star. For anyone who doesn't understand exactly what that means in particular, that is a typical Marxist-Leninist symbol right there. The clenched fist, the gun, the red star, to symbolize the quote-unquote people taking up arms and seizing the government for themselves. It's essentially a symbol for Marxist revolutionaries who are advocating for essentially violence against their political opponents and violence for a political goal. And as we see right there, ladies and gentlemen, it'd be one thing if these people were simply just, talking and, because again, you can say, oh, well, it's not like they have guns, you can dismiss it. As we could see right there, those people right there have weapons. They fired them in public as a show of strength and a show of force and a show to say, we're still here, we still exist. And, that you have to think, well, how many more of those do they have behind the scenes? So what our friend Tristan, TrisBurnedLands is doing, and what the Irish Unionist Party is doing, is very brave, because there are those people out there that would certainly like to intimidate and hurt them, but these people fight for what is right, and they do the right thing. So that's why, please, everyone, go to the Ko-Fi and support their work, because they're doing a great thing, and we have to keep supporting them. And so I also want to thank you, Tristan, for what you're doing, because you're standing up to these people, because, what you're doing, your advocacy, the more you do it, the more you're going to get attention. And these people are, at one point, if they haven't already, are going to intimidate you. So what you're doing is very brave, and what you're doing is very right. And that's why it's so important that people here in America or in Canada or across the world get behind you. How important it is for you guys to get international support, not simply just the local.
Yeah, I mean, we've had quite a lot of intimidation thus far, especially on our main Twitter account, and even on Reddit, where there have been quite a few threads on Irish Reddit where they're trying to track us all down. And we actually have had quite a lot of people who are pretending to be your typical loyalist, where they think that, oh, they're like, oh, I'm a Protestant, I'm a loyalist, and I'm right behind you. That it's quite clear that they're obviously Provos in disguise, and we have had them trying to track down some of our Limerick members and where they live. So, as much as I would like to accept the praise for being the brave one out here, but the real brave people in the party are the ones in Limerick and Waterford, in Kilkenny, and in Cork, because they have been attempted to be tracked down, and there it is quite worrying at the moment that they got quite close to where one of our members actually does live, and it turned out that that person was a communist INLA guy trying to figure out where he lived, which, if he did find out where any of our members live, there is very little places that we can actually retreat back to. We have a few friendly villages and a few friendly families where, if we are found out where we live, where we can just take a taxi or a car up to that house, and then we would be safe for a month or so. But then we would have to figure out somewhere else new to live off the grid. And it is a serious danger at the moment for our peer members that communists are trying to track out where we live. I've had quite a few people say that they're keeping an eye out for me next time because I showed my face on IUP Twitter, and they're like, next time you come down to Limerick, we're keeping an eye on you and all that. But to be honest, I'm not overly too scared of them, because they're terrorists. They only have strength if you give it to them. If you show fear, that's the only thing that actually empowers them. So my only advice to people, if INLA or IRA or whatever it is, or even if you're in Colombia and somebody threatens you, give them a stiff upper lip, and you should be fine. That's my only advice I can actually give to those sort of things. But yeah, no, it's a serious issue.
Well, definitely. I mean, for what you're saying, I mean, I'm very sorry that members of your group have been intimidated by, essentially communists, which is what they are. And the fight against communism and Marxist-Leninism, whether it's under the guise of the IRA or the FARC or whoever, this is an international fight. This is a fight that is global, and we're seeing it. And the battle's being waged everywhere. It's being waged here in America, where you have, Antifa, who are these Marxist-Leninists. I would even go so far as to say even Stalinists in some case, people, because you have to understand. I mean, these tactics that they're engaged in. It'd be one thing if they just held a sign and just called you called everyone a fascist, which is what they do. It's their trick. But it's not just that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear
Oh,
you.
sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. What happens is that these people actually then go and start fights or are literally engaged in street balls. I mean, over in Portland recently, in Portland, Oregon, there was another fight between Antifa types and Proud Boy types, and literally there were even shots engaged in the street. It's not before, and it's gone in phases, and it's very concerning because it started off with just people yelling at each other and calling each other names, and that's okay, whatever. I mean, if someone calls you a bad name, I mean, yeah, I feel bad for you, but you kind of just walk away. But then what happened is then people started actually getting in fist fights, and that was obviously very concerning. And then you had the police trying to break them up and arrest people and stuff like that, and you're just like, oh well, at least the police are there to deal with this issue and make sure that doesn't get out of hand. But now it's gone even worse. Now you're seeing people literally bring knives, bring Molotov cocktails. And at that point, you were just like, oh my God, this is getting very scary. And then you saw the police bringing in the riot squads. And then you're just like, oh my God, this is so concerning. But now it's gotten even worse. Where in Portland, there was in the most recent incident a couple days ago, there were Proud Boys and Antifa people shooting at each other with paintball guns, and there was even one instance where one or two Antifa people versus one Proud Boy were literally shooting at each other with live ammunition, in the streets of Portland. And I want to show that later. But that's just highly concerning, and that just shows you how these left-wing communist reactionaries, and then you have also too some of those right-wing reactionaries from Proud Boys, literally causing chaos and disorder in our streets. And I would argue that and here's the thing: the American leftists and the American Antifa types and the American communists are learning from people from abroad. They're learning from the history of the Provisional IRA. They're learning from the history of FARC. They're saying, well, if they can pick up the gun and they can get what they want, why can't we do it?
I mean, I was very much so back in near the end of my high school years, back in 2016. I was deeply watching what was going on with the whole Antifa Navy election. And of course, it was quite a while back, but I think it does need to be brought up, especially around the whole Antifa bringing in guns. And then obviously Proud Boy brought in a gun. But that one kid, I forget his name because I'm really bad with names. He was jumped by three people. One of them had pointed a pistol point blank at his face, and the only reason why he got out of that alive was because he had his, I think it was AR-15, funnily enough. But I don't say that's right. Obviously, self-defense is right, but bringing a gun to a riot should not be on your top priority. I would have thought it's a very dangerous situation in America, where communists and people on the right are now bringing in rifles and pistols with them intentionally because they think, all right, what do I need to bring to this riot? Milk for my eyes if I get pepper sprayed, first aid kit if I ever get a cut on my leg so it doesn't get infected. Oh, and a pistol or a rifle. Uh, it's very worrying to see that sort of stuff going on in the land of the free. Uh, and obviously, you have communist movements in Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan, which is extremely worrying. That there's now far left movements going on there that are sort of like Antifa. And I'm just sort of thinking, uh, what happens if this sort of stuff was to happen in Japan? What happens if a far leftist person, like they did in the 70s, what happens if one of them just got out one of their rifles and just brought up brought it to a protest in Japan and just shot an officer. The amount of chaos that would spread, and I mean, the fact that that's going on in America is just absolutely crazy. That the cops, although I stand by the cops and I don't intentionally slag them off, I fully support the cops, but I think that they need to really step up their game against Antifa. It's really shocking that they're even allowed to bring guns with them. Like you see them with open rifles, like that one time where they were sat there trying to control traffic. They were sat there with AK-47s, fully loaded and everything, out in broad daylight, and they had threatened people 5 times with the guns, and the police just do nothing about it. It's absolutely baffling that that's allowed to continue on, but I guess that's the modern day that we live in.
Well, it's because the police are afraid of being shot at, because you have to understand that, just these far left thugs, they're not bringing these guns just for show. It's not, because we have our organizations here, like in America, called like the John Brown Club, which is essentially a left-wing communist group, and they completely advocate for you showing guns off in public, and and it's because because again, we have the Second Amendment here in the United States, and the Second Amendment here allows for gun ownership compared to the Republic of Ireland or the United Kingdom, where gun laws are much stricter. Over here in the United States, like where I'm at in Arizona, I don't even need a license to go get a gun. I literally could go walk to a gun store. I could walk out with a semi-automatic, and I would have a waiting period of 48 to 72 hours for getting permission to get a pistol because of a background check. But the problem is that in America, background checks, aren't always as thorough because we've seen people get through the cracks, like that one guy who did a background check and passed, but he was convicted. He got expelled from the Air Force because he was convicted of domestic violence and ended up shooting a church, parishioners, because, it's terrible. But that's another topic for another time, though. But the thing about in the United States, though, going back to that, is that unlike in the Republic of Ireland or unlike in the United Kingdom or Ulster, where getting guns is something where that is like it's very difficult. It's hard to do when you have to go through black channels or nefarious ways of getting one, or hide your own, be very careful about getting one, acquiring one. Here in the United States, you can essentially just walk into your local gun store and grab one, as long as you've got the cash for it. So with these far left groups, all they have to do is simply just walk up to a gun store, show the guy the cash, and they walk out with a semi-automatic and stuff like that, and then they can bring it to the these public forums and use it as a means of intimidation. Now they call it self-defense, but I call it I really just call it intimidation. And then what you talked about, with Kyle Rittenhouse, is then you're going to see reactionaries then on the right do the same thing, and it's disappointing because I don't think a kid with Kyle Rittenhouse, I don't think he should have been there. I mean, he was a kid. He should not have had a gun placed in his hands, and it's sad, because he's probably going to get convicted and go to prison. But the thing about this is that wouldn't have happened if you hadn't had all this far left violence going on in cities across America. I mean, it would not have existed. That situation would not have occurred if you didn't have all this far left violence across the United States popping up by Antifa types who first started punching people and smashing windows and burning businesses down. And then they started saying, well, why stop there? Why not get guns too? I mean, we have some very loose laws here in the States. I mean, we can get one. And so they get members who don't have criminal records to go purchase them. And then they acquire them. And then you see them walk in the streets. And then you see what happened in Portland, where there was literally an Antifa guy and a Proud Boy guy literally shooting at each other with pistols in the streets of Portland. And the police, are just like, the police in Portland, and I want to show this, have actually said that they will not interfere in serious violence incidents, that they're going to try to make arrests afterwards, or prior. I mean, what the heck? I mean, that is essentially that's essentially telling these groups we will not stop you. So when these two groups fight, that increases the likelihood when there's no police present that someone's going to get killed, and it creates a terrible situation. And this is what I feared, because I used to tell Kevin Castley, and we both of us have kind of separated. We're not really friends anymore, unfortunately. But I used to tell Kevin I am seriously scared of Antifa types in America linking up with the new IRA in Northern Ireland or Ulster or in the Republic of Ireland, and getting training, getting arms, getting strategy, getting advice from these kind of types, because they're employing the same kind of tactics of terrorism, and it's only going to get worse. And that's why we have to support your cause of unionism, because you stand up against this communist tyranny, which is what we have to fight. And that's why I support your stuff so much, because it's really important. Because the problem with you mentioned I find it concerning that this stuff is going on in the land of the free. It is concerning, and because if it can happen here, then it tells our friends and tells our allies across the globe, it can happen there. It's happening in Colombia. It's happened in the Republic of Ireland and Ulster and the United Kingdom for a long time, and we just kind of tried to ignore it. And I see this. I see what the Antifa is today, and I look back at their history of of Ireland, and I see that that what we're seeing today in America is essentially the beginning of what Ulster and the Republic of Ireland went through with the terrorism of the IRA. Because it didn't start with guns. It started with fist fights. It started with knives. It started with intimidation, and then it moved on from there. And that's what we're going to see. And that's what we're going to see here, unfortunately, if we don't deal with it.
The people always see all these old footage from the Troubles, where you have the IRA sat there at that one base in Donegal. I forget the name of it. Yet again, I'm bad with names. Where they're sat there at that one farm with their anti-air guns, and they have them up on the roofs of there, where they have these big, massive anti-air rifles that they got from the Palestinians in Libya. And what people in America, I don't think, particularly realize is that they see this and they go like, oh, well, there's no way that the communists in our country could do it. Of course they can. You see from Venezuela, and you see it from Colombia, and you see it from Mexico, especially Mexico, with their massive gun trade, that they are very much so willing, and a lot of Antifa have gotten guns, and a lot of far-right people did actually get guns from the Mexicans. I forget the cartel. They actually got guns and rifles from the cartel, and those cartel people do have such weapons like RPGs. They have anti-air machine guns, and you only have to wonder is if the Americans don't step up and do something about it, how long is it till you start seeing very similar footage in America to what happened in Derry, where you had IRA men, only in the case of America, the Antifa people, having no-go areas for police. Like they already have started making no-go areas, from my understanding, in Detroit and stuff. How far is it till Antifa gets their hands on some very heavy machinery? I don't think it's too far off or out of the realm of possibilities that Antifa will be armed with some higher end stuff, which is obviously not good news at all. It's very worrying. But yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, you don't want to see a bomb attack, but unfortunately, that's what seems to, be the case that's going to be happening, because as people start to forget what's going on, about the history of, far left people, is that, I look is that they tend to look at it from their American perspective, because we're very American centric. But all you have to do is look at the history of what happened in the Republic of Ireland or in Ulster, and see what happens when these far left people get their guns, get their bombs, and worse, get organized. And so, and because we've seen it happen already. And and that so for you and for your people to brave those people, because yes, those people have, quote unquote, gone straight, put on a suit and tie. But even now, you've talked about, how some of your members have faced intimidation. People have tried to, infiltrate your organization and try to find out who your members are, find out where they live, and stuff like that. I mean, they still get, in my opinion, tacit support from people in the government who are sympathetic to their cause. They just, kind of they just turn a blind eye from it. Jerry Adams and the now deceased Martin McGuinness, uh, they never put their republicanism at the door, their violent streak. I mean, they just hid it behind a smile and a suit and a tie.
Yeah, I mean,
And I just want to read real quick too. It kind of reminds me of the Bible, where in the Bible it talks about, how Satan will not come as this evil and presence. He actually comes off as an angel of light. It's kind of like, like the Lord of the Rings, where where Frodo says, he looks foul but feels fair. I'm more worried about the one that looks fair but feels foul.
you know, to refer to the Bible, yeah, I mean, the the antichrists, as there is multiple of them, they will prop themselves up as saviors of humanity, but of course they're wolves in sheep clothing. Uh, yeah, it's sort of what they are doing. They prop themselves off as we're saviors of the Irish people, or we're saviors of America, or even Colombia, where they'll be saying, without us, you will perish. But, you know, it's just wolves in sheep clothing. They're just purely out there to make money off you and to harm you and your families. It's their only goal in mind is to be propping themselves up as their only warlords. And yeah, I sent you a video in the DMs of one of the INLA funerals that happened lately, which sort of shows off uh, the sort of Marxism that's going on, especially in Derry, or some people call it Londonderry, where it's they'll go out with these red banners and they'll praise all these foreign uh, communist revolutionaries, and it's an international revolution that they're trying to prop up, and all the communist movements. A lot of people will say, "Oh, they're not all connected." They are all connected. Every last single one of those communist movements. So if we can take out one of the cogs out of that machine, hopefully the rest of the machine will be damaged from that, which is why we need to, as an international community, sort of organize in these like neocon groups against communism, where it's an international struggle against Marxism. And yeah, it's important work.
Exactly, yeah. And everyone, I want you all to please look at Tristan's YouTube page, also, besides, because he does some great content there as a part of the advocacy for unionism, and he's had some has some really great videos I'm a big fan of. In fact, do you mind if I show them?
You can go ahead, I guess.
Okay, because I'm a huge fan personally. He's had some really great content. So right here, so the YouTube page, everyone. So please go check it out. He's does some great videos right here. All sorts of wonderful songs and stuff like that. Celebrating the rich history of Irish Unionism, and also calling out the bad guys and stuff like that. So he's got some really great content. This Irish Unionism, that video of mine was probably my favorite right there. And everyone should remember should watch this one too, the Royal Ulster Constabulary, because that was a police force, ladies and gentlemen, that had to deal with not only trying to do regular police duties, but deal with serious terrorism on a day in, day out. The people that were part of that unit were brave as hell and heroes, and people should recognize that the huge sacrifices people who were in that unit made for the public. And let me go here, because I want to show this to everyone too.
The Green and Lodge Hotel on the western outskirts of Belfast were moved out after a bomb warning. Shortly after midnight, the device left in a car to the rear of the building went off. Remnants of the vehicle littered the ground. Part of it ended on the roof of the hotel. The owner said that there's structural damage to the building. It's the second time that this hotel has been attacked since it changed ownership. The hotel was open again this afternoon, and the message from the owners is that it'll stay in business. Several nearby houses were damaged in the blast. A woman in this house was thrown across a room, while part of the ceiling fell into her daughter's bedroom. Damage both inside and out was considerable. At Rodney Drive in the Falls area, meanwhile, an operation continued to make safe a device found in a derelict house. The device was discovered yesterday, and the RUC say that it was intended for their officers.
Good evening, as you've just heard on the news.
And I want to add another one right here that the public needs to see, because this is just important, because when you see these videos of attacks going on in that were committed by the IRA, I mean, you have to understand just how terrible the situation could be, here in the United States, or for us. I mean, because we live very much in the idea of privilege. Oh, this can't happen here, but it's happened to everything. And so I want everyone to look at this Ulster History Archive, to go to the YouTube channel, and I'm actually going to post the link for it in the chat. I want people to go see that too as well, because it's critically important we understand the history and support our Irish Unionist friends like Tristan, because you have to remember that this is the sort of thing that they're fighting against. And like I said, while the terrorists like these people, like Martin McGuinness and Jerry Adams, may have put on, like right here, a suit and a tie with a smile, although Martin McGuinness is now deceased, that doesn't mean that there aren't people today who are willing to commit crimes for them or in the name of them. So let's look at this right here.
Louth farmer Tom Oliver was also killed by the IRA.
Hundreds waited outside Thomas Oliver's home in Riverstown amid an atmosphere of undisguised anger at his murder.
Judge Smithwick accepted a witness account that Corrigan had told the IRA that Oliver had been passing information on IRA activities to the guards. It is one of the most controversial aspects of the Smithwick report. Owen Corrigan believes it implicated him directly in the 1991 murder of Oliver.
So I want people to recognize that, the IRA of the past, the Provisional IRA and the IRA we see today called the new IRA. when they claim that they're fighting for the, for anti-Catholic discrimination, stuff like that. I just showed you right there, there's two videos in which they specifically targeted Irish Catholics who did not support their ideals or their visions, or at the very least were supportive of law and order. And this is what happens when what they do to people who don't fall into their political line. As you can see, in one case they bombed a neighborhood, and in another they actually went and assassinated someone. And it's critically important to support the cause of Irish unionism, everyone, because it is part of the struggle, the neoconservative struggle against international communism. This is not simply something that we should talk about and say, oh, well, we can work with the Republic of Ireland and stuff like that. The Republic of Ireland, has government. It's called the Dáil, right? Yeah, the Dáil is not sympathetic to the West. It's not sympathetic to Christianity. It's not sympathetic to to our interests. Very often we've seen them ally and work with some of the worst actors in the world, like the PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization. They've called for BDS against our greatest ally in the Middle East, the state of Israel. And continually when it comes to violence in Northern Ireland, they say one thing and do another. And so it's extremely important for us to support the work that Tristan is doing. And again, I just want to thank you, Tristan, for what you're doing and what you try to do, because you're up against a lot of hurdles. You're up against you're essentially running against the treadmill, and the people who are against you are running with the treadmill. But you that's why we have to support you. That's why I have to keep working with you, because we have to bring the message out, and we have to keep fighting for an Ireland that is reunited with Great Britain, because that spirit has never gone away. Even after the Irish Civil War, and before then, there were still people who said in the South, we don't want to separate. We want to stay with the United Kingdom. We owe our allegiance to her. She is taking care of us. And there were a lot of terrible crimes perpetrated against Unionists in the South, because they no longer had the protection of the British Army and were persecuted and even at times killed. And you're carrying on their spirit and their legacy by the work you're doing. That's a lot to take on, but you're carrying that. You and the work that your friends are doing is carrying that on, and I'm extremely appreciative of that. And the spirit of those people and the legacies of those people are with you.
Yeah. Yeah. My family has been showing me some support with this whole movement, because they're aware of what I'm doing. And my granny, who I'm very appreciative of, she has been showing me quite a lot, because her mother and her grandmother were some of those families that were, whenever the Free State became a thing and then the British Army pulled out without warning, sort of like what's going on in Afghanistan, funnily enough. Almost immediately, the IRA Dublin Command went out to over 700 farms across the country and burnt down all the churches, which were Protestant, mostly churches, because they had seen it as the enemy of the Irish people. And they had burnt down all the homes, they had lynched the families, which is why my granny still doesn't talk about it to this day, because of what happened to our family in Leitrim. And it's something that I think every Irish person should remember, especially when celebrating stuff like the Easter Rising, is not everyone did support republicanism. In the Easter Rising, 2 Dubliners died because they took up rifles against the IRA, and they had worked in with a famous story of the guy of his horse cart. He was taking civilians away from the GPO, and he was a unionist because he was completely against the IRA, while his mates helped give him cover fire because the British Army had not arrived yet. Only the local Dublin garrison was there at the time. But I think it is something that needs to be realised, is that a lot of Irish people did die in the name of unionism to help keep Ireland within the Union. And it's something that I particularly feel very passionate about, because I don't want their deaths to be in vain, basically. But yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, the similarities between, the Republic of Ireland or the South and of Afghanistan are just is so strong, because you've seen where in the during the after World War One, the British public was just not willing to carry on a fight in the South. They kind of wanted to wash their hands of it because they had just suffered terrible costs in World War One. Losing an entire generation for a war that I would argue just what was just was avoidable, but unfortunately had to be fought to stop German imperialism in Europe. But sadly, unfortunately, that war had such a great cost and toll, and people in Great Britain just said, "Look, we don't want to fight another war in the South. Look, just get it over with." And what that did was it said that, and for the people Unionists in the South, who are not in the Ulster, kind of left them essentially to the wolves. And what happened was is that after the negotiations and the Civil War, and even during the Civil War, people from the Provos, the IRA, and others decided, well, we're gonna go get those Unionists and kill them. And it's a thing that's recurring, because that's what we're seeing in Afghanistan, where the American public, rather than stay the course and fight it out, even for a status quo that at least would have kept the peace, instead just said, we want to get out, leave. And Joe Biden presided over just an absolute debacle, where the military just left in the middle of the night. And it's not like they like had a ceremony, raise the flag, the Afghan flag over the American base, take down the American flag, say, okay, so we're going to switch over ownership to you guys. Please be ready to take over by this day and time. We're going to have a ceremony, and then tell the Americans, listen, we're leaving by this day. We need you to get to the airport. We need you to plan out your routes, and we'll work with you. And then also for Afghan allies, saying, we want to get you out of the country. Please be at the embassy. Please be ready to leave at this time. It was just a debacle, and we're now seeing the ramifications of that, to where Afghanistan now is literally, we're seeing a potential Taliban government recognized by people in the international community, which is absolutely atrocious. And then just like within Ireland, where the Great Britain left, and then just right after it left, bam, civil war, where people were just fighting in the streets, and destroyed destroyed everything that had been built. So essentially at that point, it's like, well, why did we even fight for independence if this is what we got from it? And I would argue that that the South should not have separated from Great Britain. It should have stayed with Great Britain, because it had so. But and unfortunately today, we've seen, we look back at history, and we see the terrible ramifications of of leaving the South, and now we're going to see the ramifications of what it means to leave Afghanistan. And I would like people to what Tristan talked about, some terrible incidences that happened to his family, or to people that his family knew, and to his communities, the things that they don't talk about, because there were real life tragedies that were committed by the IRA or their supporters. And I'm going to share something real quick. I'm not going to show the video completely, because it's a 30-minute video, but I at least want you viewers to please take a look at it. It's called the Kingsmill, the IRA's Most Evil Massacre. It's a video posted by Ulster Troubles, and I definitely want you all to please take a look at that, because this also details some of the really great history of the region. And what we see here in Kingsmill was a terrible incident in which people were just massacred. In it's absolutely horrific, and it was one of the terrible crimes committed by the IRA. And I'll show. I don't want to go on too much longer because we're gonna about hit the hour and a half mark, and it's late for Tristan. He's in the United Kingdom. I'm in the States, so while it might be 1:30 for me here, it's like what 9:30 for you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't want to go much too longer because I don't want to keep him up longer than I should. So I guess we'll just we'll begin getting ready to close because I usually try to keep it to an hour and 5 or an hour and 10, but there's been so much to talk about, so and because Tristan is doing such great work. And so definitely everyone please take a look at that video, and everyone also please go to his Ko-Fi page and definitely support the cause. So Tristan, why don't you give me a 3 to 5 minute closing statement on the work you're doing and how important it is, because it's so important for us to back you guys.
Yeah, sure. Well, I just want to say, first of all, that it has been a massive pleasure to come onto this show to spread the good word and all that against modern day Marxism. The way I see it is Ireland is one of the major gateways into Britain, and it is falling to the Marxist world. The work that we're trying to do is rather important in trying to secure the rights of the Protestant and Catholic Church, to secure the rights of farmers in Southern Ireland who are subject to EU tariffs and to EU rules, which highly damage their quality of food. Uh, it's a struggle for the Irish culture. We are trying our best to push against a cultural revolution movement that was started by the IRA in 1910. And with your guys' support, we have managed to do IRL meetings in Limerick, where we were able to, funnily enough, go in front of one of the Provisional IRA's main offices in Limerick, and we were able to just put up one of our stickers and posters right outside of their office to show that not everyone in Ireland will put up with their stuff. And I think it's a great confidence booster to some communities in Munster and Connacht and Ulster to know that there is an alternative from in the Irish Parliament, since every single party in the Irish Parliament so far are all pro-republic. There's not a single one of those parties that is, oh, maybe we should look somewhere else. It's all a one-party state where you have to agree with the republic. You have to push some form of republicanism, and you have to push all these other stuff. And the IUP has now given an outlet to over a few 100,000 Irish people who are sick and tired of the modern way that Ireland is, where it's a Belfast versus Dublin stance. We're now giving them the London option, which shall hopefully in the future be able to make some serious progress in Ireland and get some freedoms out there. And I want to just say to those who are my Hong Konger friends who have also been helping me quite a bit, that we do stand with Hong Kong, we do stand with Taiwan, and we do stand with South Korea. And after we're done with pushing communism out of Ireland, I hope that Ireland and all the Irish people will all join up and help push communism out of countries across the world, like in South America and in Asia. It's yeah, It's been a pleasure coming on, and I thank you for letting me on to say my piece.
No problem. Thank you, Tristan. That's a very excellent closing statement because, what you're doing, you're standing up to, communists in a very intense area, and you're saying to them that we're not going to take, the crap you're giving us. We want a better future for ourselves and for our posterity, and because everyone, just really quickly before we go, also show everyone. So you're getting people out there supporting you. We've got Limerick Loyal, highlighting some of the great work you're doing. You know, going out there and trying getting the message out. Uh, showing it clearly and in such great great with great looks and great flair. And without the work you're doing, there wouldn't be this advocacy. Look at this right here. So no republic, restore our kingdom, rethink 32. So what our friend here is doing, everyone, is he is standing up against the Republicans and standing up against communists. And so we have got to take a stand, and we've got to support that work. And because this is a part of our fight against global communism. Neoconservatives, we have to stand up against communism globally, and we have to support our friends, like the Irish Unionists, and back them up as we continue to fight, the communists wherever they are. And the work you're doing, Tristan. Again, we'll close. Well, I want to thank you so much. Please continue what you're doing. Don't lose faith. Keep the faith. Keep working. Keep pressing for it. I at this channel support you. I'm going to continually support you, and we're going to get more people to support you over time. We're going to keep this going. We're going to keep it going onward and upward. Just like in the Bible, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. Say to this mountain, move, and it will move. And the mountain that you're facing is, republicanism, communism, Marxist-Leninism, and with the faith of a mustard seed, with the willingness to go forward and move forward, and with the support you're going to get from people like me and from others, I believe you're going to do great things. So we're going to continue to see great things, and hopefully one day we're going to see a big Irish Unionist Party conference in Dublin, in Belfast, and hopefully we'll get some great you'll get some great speakers, get some big media flair, and heck, maybe one day we'll bring you over here to the States and we'll do something similar. Because we need to we need to learn from those nasty Republicans with their friends of Sinn Féin who make millions here. We need to get some money for you guys from over here and support what you're doing over there. So again, Tristan, thank you so much. Everyone, please, again, visit his YouTube channel. Please also visit the Ko-Fi for the party and show them your support. Thank you so much, Tristan. You have a great night, okay?
All right, thank you.
So everyone, as you can see right there, we've got a great friend right there in the cause against international communism. It's extremely important for us to stand up for him and stand up for what the work he is doing and continue to fight the struggle and the fight against international communism. Because we have to fight, just like Ulster. Ulster will fight, and Ulster will be right. It's important for us to stand up with Irish Unionists in the Republic of Ireland because they are part of our fight against international communism. What they're doing is they're fighting against the forces of Marxist-Leninism, and they're facing dangerous people. These people try to, as Tristan just talked about, are trying to infiltrate their ranks. They're trying to intimidate them. They're trying to find out where they live. And so they live in the reality, ladies and gentlemen, of real persecution and suffering and of real life intimidation and threats of violence. We only see it, or hear about it, they actually live it. So let's continue to support, please, our Unionist friends in both on the South and the North. And let's continue to fight for what they believe in and continue to support them. And hey, everyone, thank you so much for coming on. I do appreciate it. It's been a great show, great episode. We'll have Tristan on again in the future. And don't forget, everyone, death to all tyrants.